espionage life and was ready to defect to America. He failed to mention that his superior had recently complained to Moscow about his shoddy performance, requesting he be recalled to Russia. In essence, Heihanen feared for his life. Heihanen proved to be a gold mine of information about the Soviet spy ring in the U.S., even though he knew his two superiors only by their code names, Mikhail and Mark. The FBI was visibly disappointed they had nothing further to go on. Heihanen then recalled that he knew the location of Mark's art studio in Brooklyn. Suddenly, the FBI realized the master spy had committed a faux pas of immense proportions. The standard inviolable rule in the espionage world is never let anyone, not even a fellow spy, know where you are living. It was through this lapse that American authorities eventually learned of Colonel Rudolf Ivanovich Abel, a high-ranking KGB intelligence officer with a name straight from a Dostoevsky novel, as were his scarecrow-like features and stern demeanor, who was undoubtedly the most prolific Soviet spy to have ever pierced the shores of America. Abel was a citizen of Russia and an influential colonel in the KGB. The KGB had assigned him the codename Mark for his communications with other Soviet agents. A decade earlier, he had entered the U.S. illegally through a porous gap along the Canadian border. Abel, whose cover was that of a photographer and artist, lived in various hotels and apartments in New York City, and he maintained an art studio in Brooklyn, where he kept most of his tools of espionage, a short-wave radio and various devices concealing secret and often encrypted messages in small, hollowed-out containers. To disguise his identity, he adopted two creative aliases: Emil Robert Goldfuss, an infant who had died in New York City in 1903, and Martin Collins, a fictitious individual purportedly born in New York City. It was 72 years before American journalists found Abel's real name carved on his tombstone in Moscow's Donskoy Cemetery, William Genrichevich Fischer. Rhino Heihanen, Abel's betrayer, was given the codename Vic to conduct his clandestine activities in the U.S. For 3 years, from July 1949 to October 1952, Heihanen lived in Finland and began to establish his identity as the American-born Eugene Nikolai Mackey. The real Mackey was born in Enaville, Idaho, on May 30th, 1919, which meant that he was about the same age as Heihanen. 10 years later, the parents of Eugene Mackey became enamored of glowing reports about the socialist utopia in the so-called modern Russia, and the family sold everything they had and moved to Estonia. In Moscow, plans were being carefully made for the new Mackey, this one thoroughly trained in foreign espionage, to enter the scene. During the period of switching identities, Heihanen was deadly serious about the development of his alternate persona, so serious that even his new wife did not know about his earlier life. Before Heihanen left the Soviet Union, he received extensive training in the techniques of espionage, both traditional and modern. He was given thorough instruction in the finer aspects of photography, with particular emphasis on microdots, photographic reduction of a document which can later be enlarged to a readable size, and soft film, ordinary film chemically treated to remove its backing, rendering it pliable and capable of being folded to a very small size. Heihanen was taught how to carefully secrete messages in tiny, hollowed-out objects such as coins, bolts, screws, and matchbooks for transmission to the USSR. He was also given training in cryptography for transmitting exceptionally sensitive information in a code difficult to break if accidentally apprehended. On July 3, 1951, the 31-year-old Heihanen traveled to the American Embassy in Helsinki, Finland, and presented a birth certificate showing that he was born as Eugene Nikolai Mackey in Enaville, Idaho, on May 30, 1919. In the presence of a vice-consul, Heihanen executed an affidavit in which he explained that his family had left the United States for Estonia when he was 10 years old, that he accompanied his mother until her death, and that he then left Estonia for Finland.